17 Russian tanks, 14 artillery systems, 31 troop transport vehicles were destroyed on the way to retreat. At a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on Tuesday afternoon, April 25, Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman Brigadier General Alexei Hromov said that in the past 24 hours, fighting took place mainly in the city of Bakhmut. The Russian troops withdrew from the Lyman, Avdiivka and Marinka battlefields to switch to a defensive posture before the general counteroffensive of the Ukrainian army. Southern Command spokesman Natalia Humanyuk said Ukrainian defense forces had shown fairly strong combat results in the southern axis over the past 3 days. Ukrainian defenders destroy about 13 to 20 pieces of invader equipment every day. Natalia Humanyuk said Ukrainian troops were clearing the front line on the east bank of the Dnipro River when the Russians fled 10 to 20 kilometers from the natural line of the Dnipro River. Brigadier General Alexei Hromov said the Ukrainian Air Force and artillery attacked the retreating Russian convoy. In the past day alone, the Air Force has launched 9 attacks and the Ukrainian artillery has launched 6 shelling attacks on the evacuating Russian groups. As a result, 5 tanks, 12 armored vehicles, 14 artillery systems, 2 air defense systems and 31 troop and fuel transport vehicles were destroyed. 690 Russian troops were eliminated from the battle. In total, from February 24, 2022 to April 25, 187,770 invaders were eliminated from the battle. In addition, Ukrainian defense forces destroyed 3,688 Russian tanks, 7,151 armored vehicles, 2,863 artillery systems, 539 mass-launched missile systems, 291 air defense systems, 308 combat aircraft, 294 helicopters, 2,437 tactical and combat-grade drones, 911 cruise missiles, 18 warships, 5,784 troop and fuel transport vehicles, and 345 specialized equipment units. 2. Massive explosions simultaneously in many Russian cities. For the first time, a drone penetrated the air defenses of Moscow's capital. The Russian media has criticized and demanded accountability for the Russian 1st Air Defense Division in charge of protecting the capital's skies. This development occurred after a Ukrainian drone loaded with explosives escaped the division's air defenses. Will Stewart and Anthony Blair of The Sun, based in London, have a report titled "Behind Enemy Lines Ukrainian Kamikaze Drone Crashes East of Moscow, while another punches through Putin's defenses in occupied Crimea," which means, after back of the object a Ukrainian kamikaze drone crashes into eastern Moscow, while another punch penetrates Putin's defenses in temporarily occupied Crimea. The wreckage of a suspected Ukrainian drone has been discovered just a few dozen miles from the Russian capital in a potential but huge new danger to Russia. The image shows the remains of a military drone near the town of Noginsk in the Russian capital, just 52 miles or 83 kilometers east of the Kremlin. It is believed that the suspected Ukrainian UJ-22 drone managed to fly over the capital or was flying around the capital. The drone was discovered by a local woman, 35, who went into the woods to bury her dead kitten. Police said the drone was carrying 17 kilograms of Canadian M112 explosives. According to reports in Russian state media, explosives experts worked at the site for 5 hours to ensure safety before carrying the explosives away. Its location is closer to Moscow than any previously disclosed Ukrainian attack drone. Drones managed to evade the capital's air defenses, which have been massively beefed up in recent weeks. According to Russian sources, it may have crashed among the trees after running out of fuel, although its flight path and intended target remain unclear. If proven to be a Ukrainian military drone, it would confirm Russian concerns that Moscow is vulnerable, despite the massive deployment of air defense systems around the city. So far, the capital has not been hit by Ukrainian airstrikes since the start of Putin's invasion of Ukraine last February. This development occurred when another military drone struck an oil depot in Rovenki, in the Russian-invaded Luhansk region, causing a massive explosion. Video shows flames bursting from the facility as firefighters tried to prevent the flames from spreading to nearby warehouses. This news comes after comments that Ukraine is preparing for a major offensive to retake Crimea and humiliate Vladimir Putin. Moscow is about 280 miles from the nearest point in Ukraine in a straight line. Elsewhere, Governor of Belgorod Vyacheslav Gladkov, which shares a border with Ukraine, yesterday reported at least 4 drone strikes on his territory. One person was injured in one of the attacks. Belgorod has been the site of recent Ukrainian drone attacks, particularly on Russian power plants. Reports said some areas of the city of Belgorod, which has a population of 340,000, were without power following the attack on an important substation on the outskirts of Igoumenka. Another town, Dragunsko, about 6 miles northwest of the city center, was hit by artillery fire, according to the Baza media agency, which has close links to law enforcement. Last month, Putin accused Ukrainian saboteurs of being behind the hostage-taking in Russia's Bryansk region, although footage showed it was taken by Russian opposition figures waving Russian flags rather than Russian flags. Ukrainian flag. The tyrant said in a televised address, "Our soldiers and officers defend against neo-Nazis and terrorists, who today carried out another terrorist attack, infiltrated the border area and opened fire on civilians." 3. Moscow was attacked by drones. Russia races to hide the location of the secret tunnel in Moscow. On the morning of Tuesday, April 25, Russian media reported that air defense units on the outskirts of Moscow destroyed several drones believed to have been launched by Ukrainian forces to attack facilities. Russian civil infrastructure. CNN was unable to verify these reports. Against this backdrop, Newsweek ran a report titled "Russia Scrambling to Hide Locations of Secret Bunkers in Moscow," meaning Russia races to conceal the location of the secret bunkers in Moscow. Department. Russian authorities are said to be trying to conceal the location of secret bunkers in Moscow. Latvia-based independent news agency Meduza reported that days before Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Roskomnadzor, a government agency, asked YouTube to remove the video of the historian's presentation. Dmitry Yurkov in April 2021. He is discussing a book he has written titled Urban, Secret Underground of the Soviet Union's Special Fortifications of the 1930s to 1960s, and is particularly striking. Bunker 703 in Moscow was declassified in 2018 and currently operates as a museum. The presentation was published in April 2021 on the YouTube channel Underground Moscow run by museum staff. The presentation by historian Dmitry Yurkov, dedicated to the declassified tanks in Moscow. Based on a new book on the history of special Soviet fortifications. For the first time, documentation of Subway 2 and Stalin's bunker without fiction and mythology, based on archival materials, the video's caption reads. In February 2022, just before Russian President Vladimir Putin launched an all-out invasion of his neighboring country, Roskomnadzor attempted to take down the video. Roskomnadzor employees wrote to YouTube's legal aid service and said that the alleged presentation disclosed information constituting a state secret and that this information is used for personal gain, interests of national defense. Officials cited a December 2021 ruling from a court in Moscow that the information was relevant and not declassified. Roskomnadzor in March 2022 sent another notice to YouTube asking for the presentation to be removed. But the video is still available on the video streaming platform. According to Meduza, it's unclear whether the presentation contained secret documents, but the news agency cited a former museum employee as saying that after Yurkov's book was published, the museum began accepting received dispatches from the prosecutor's office and warnings from the supervisory agency examining the spread of information containing state secret content. Historian Yurkov argues that the information is declassified. Newsweek has reached out to YouTube and the Russian Foreign Ministry for comment via email. 4. Estonian Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas, is visiting Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine. Estonia is a country bordering Russia and fears that a successful invasion of Ukraine will encourage Vladimir Putin to head towards the Baltic region to retake the countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. Kallas said Ukraine should be admitted to the European Union and NATO, and signed a joint statement during her visit. She said she supported Ukraine getting more ammunition, weapons and training, which is why she proposed the European Union move to supply 1 million artillery shells to Ukraine. They met in Zhytomyr, a city west of Kyiv that was once a historic transport hub connecting the Ukrainian capital with Minsk in Belarus and Warsaw in Poland. 5. Intelligence Bulletin of the UK Department of Defence Intelligence. In the latest intelligence report, the UK Department of Defence Intelligence said the following. During April 2023, Russia's average daily casualty rate most likely fell by about 30%. This follows particularly heavy Russian casualties from January to March 2023. Figures released by the General Staff of Ukraine show a decrease from a daily average of 776 Russian casualties in March to 568 in April, as of today. The UK Department of Defence Intelligence cannot verify the exact Ukrainian method, but the general trend can be considered accurate. Russian losses are most likely reduced as their winter offensive failed to achieve their goals, and Russian forces are now focused on preparing for the anticipated invasion of Ukraine operations. 6. European Union establishes civilian mission in Moldova to defend security, territorial integrity, and sovereignty. The Council of Europe said it had set up a civilian mission in Moldova to strengthen resilience in the security sector of the country. Some of the focus areas will include crisis management, cybersecurity, and combating foreign manipulation, according to a statement from the Council on Monday. We are witnessing increased and continued Russian efforts to destabilize Moldova with mixed actions that make it one of the countries hardest hit by the consequences of the invasion. Russia's illegal strategy into Ukraine, top European Union diplomat Josep Borrell said in the statement. Today we are increasing the support of the European Union to Moldova to protect its security, territorial integrity, and sovereignty. The launch of this new mandate is another important political sign of the EU's support in the current difficult situation, he added. The Council said Moldova had formally invited the European Union to launch a civilian mission in the country in January. A civilian mission is the deployment of non-military personnel in times of crisis, primarily for peace-building purposes. These can include a wide range of activities, from police training to judicial reform. European Union foreign ministers met in Luxembourg on Monday to discuss a number of topics, including the war in Ukraine. When he arrived at the meeting, Borrell said the situation in Moldova and Georgia would also be discussed, as the countries on the border and the Russian invasion of Ukraine are very close, they feel the threat. Russia has been accused of laying the groundwork for a coup that could drag Moldova, a small country on Ukraine's southwestern border, into the Kremlin's war. Moldovan President Maia Sandu has accused Russia of using saboteurs disguised as civilians to incite unrest, and echoed similar warnings from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In response, the Russian Foreign Ministry dismissed her concerns as baseless. The United States believes Russia is undermining the Moldovan government, according to White House officials, as it continues to seek closer ties with the European Union. 7. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov supported his eldest son Nikolai's claim that he served in the Wagner mercenary force in Ukraine. Yes, I took part in the special military operation, Peskov said at a press conference with reporters on Monday. Moscow repeatedly calls the war in Ukraine a special military operation. When asked why his son chose to fight with the Wagner group instead of regular Russian forces, Peskov said it was his son's decision, adding that he had served in the past himself. Service in the Russian armed forces as part of constitutional obligations. Nikolai Peskov said in an interview with the Russian newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda over the weekend that he fought in Ukraine for almost 6 months and received the Order of Courage. CNN was unable to independently verify the claim. The children of Russian government figures and elites have been criticized for not fighting in Ukraine or going to the front lines. Nikolai Peskov's interview comes after Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, said on Friday that the Kremlin spokesman's son had served as a sniper in his mercenary force. Prigozhin did not specify what time period he was talking about. Boss Wagner has a track record of making unsubstantiated claims, often using sarcasm, and CNN was unable to verify his claims. In an intelligence report on April 22, the UK's Ministry of Defence Intelligence reported that the Russian Ministry of Defence had launched an operation with advertisements appearing massively on Russian social media sites, on billboards, and on TV. The new ads incite the masculine pride of potential recruits, calling them real men, as well as highlighting the financial benefits of joining. The goal set by the Russian Defense Ministry is to attract 400,000 volunteers. The story that Nikolai Peskov claimed that he participated in the fighting in Ukraine was released in this context. The Moscow Times reported that during the nearly 6-month period Nikolai Peskov allegedly fought for the Wagner army in distant Ukraine, he was fined twice by the traffic police for drinking and driving an expensive Tesla in Moscow. 8. Russian media exposed the case that the son of Putin ally went to fight in Ukraine. In an intelligence report on April 22, the UK's Ministry of Defence Intelligence reported that the Russian Ministry of Defence had launched an operation with advertisements appearing massively on Russian social media sites, on billboards, and on TV. The new ads incite the masculine pride of potential recruits, calling them real men, as well as highlighting the financial benefits of joining. The goal set by the Russian Defense Ministry is to attract 400,000 volunteers. In that context, Nikolai Peskov, the son of a rich family, the eldest son of Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, said that he participated in the war in Ukraine in the Wagner army. But, independent Russian media reports claim that in the nearly 6-month period Nikolai Peskov claimed to have fought for the Wagner army in remote Ukraine, he was fined twice by the traffic police for drinking and driving a car. Expensive Tesla cars in Moscow. Newsweek had an article titled "Putin ally's son racked up Tesla fines while fighting in Ukraine," which means reports that Putin's ally's son had to pay a fine for a Tesla while fighting in Ukraine. Local media reported sarcastically that the son of Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for the Kremlin, paid a fine for driving a Tesla he owned while fighting in Ukraine. Several Telegram channels, including Soda and VCHKOGPU, reported that a Tesla Model X owned by Peskov's 33-year-old son Nikolai Chols until the end of March was fined twice, on July 24 and November 6, 2022, when he declared himself to be fighting in Ukraine with the Wagner Corporation. Newsweek has not been able to independently verify VCHKOGPU's claims and has reached out to the Russian Foreign Ministry via email for comment. The Wagner Group, a paramilitary organization founded by Yevgeny Prigozhin, was heavily involved in the war in Bakhmut, a small industrial city located in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. It recruited thousands of prisoners across Russia to fight in Ukraine. Prigozhin announced in an interview on April 21 that a son of Peskov fought in Ukraine. Without giving a specific name, Prigozhin said a spokesman for the Kremlin had asked him to put his son into the Wagner Group as a simple gunner. Wagner mob boss Yevgeny Prigozhin said, "Few people know about it." Kremlin spokesman Peskov confirmed on Monday that his son was involved in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. "I've come to that decision, I'm an adult," he told reporters. Prigozhin said he accepted Peskov's son into his group, which provides soldiers for hire, using forged documents. According to Prigozhin, Nikolai Peskov served just less than half a year. The founder of the Wagner Group said Peskov's son lived part of his life in the US, if I'm not mistaken, or in the UK. Meduza, an independent news agency based in Latvia, reported that Prigozhin's description matches Peskov's eldest son, Nikolai Chols Peskov, who has lived in the UK for 10 years and returned to Russia around 2011 until 2012. According to Reuters, Nikolai Peskov lived in the UK for a decade in the early 1990s and early 2010s, served in Russia's strategic missile forces. Several Telegram channels have expressed suspicion that Peskov's son fought in Ukraine because his Tesla was fined in Moscow when he claimed to be in the neighboring country with the Wagner Group. The VCHKOGPU has collected suspicious information that the son of Putin's mouthpiece, Dmitry Peskov, fought as part of the Wagner army and did not make a combat journey to take pictures, VCHKOGPU Telegram channel said. The media cited an unnamed source as saying that the car was his favorite car. From the beginning to the end of 2022, the car was actively moving around Moscow and data on fines was even kept. During Nikolai's declared campaign, the electric car violated traffic rules on routes familiar to its owners in July and November 2022. And there were every reason to believe that it was Nikolai who drove the car, the Telegram channel said. Nikolai Peskov told Russian news agency Komsomolskaya Pravda in an interview published on Saturday that he considers it his duty to fight in Ukraine. "I can't sit by and watch my friends go to Ukraine." 9. Germany seeks clarity on China's position on the sovereignty of former Soviet states. Germany wants China to explain its position on the sovereignty of former Soviet Union states following controversial remarks by China's ambassador to France, Liu She, a German foreign ministry spokesman said on Wednesday. Monday. Christian Wagner said, "We recorded the Chinese ambassador's statements on French television with great surprise, especially since these statements did not match the Chinese position that we knew until now. Now, of course, we expect China to explain its position clearly," he added. Since the Russian Federation and other states that emerged from the breakup of the Soviet Union recognized each other as sovereign states within their current borders, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the states, this is sacrosanct, Wagner said. In an interview with the French network TF1, Liu Sa-deep said that, in international law, even countries belonging to the former Soviet Union have no valid status in international law, because there is no any international agreement to concretize their status as a sovereign state. Liu Sa-deep's comment was criticized as foolish, because according to his assessment, Russia itself, also a country from the former Soviet bloc, does not have the status of a sovereign state. Permission. Yet today, Russia has taken a seat on the United Nations Security Council. It is understood that he was referring only to a range of countries including Ukraine, Latvia, Estonia and Lithuania. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis has said such comments are completely unacceptable, and stressed that, if one is still wondering why the Baltic states do not trust China in brokering peace in Ukraine, here is a Chinese ambassador arguing that Crimea belongs to Russia and the borders of our countries have no legal basis. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, said Liu She's words were unacceptable, and he hoped they did not reflect Beijing's official stance. The comment of the Chinese ambassador to France is unacceptable, Mr. Borrell said. The European Union hopes that these statements do not represent official Chinese policy. On Monday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Mao Ning said Beijing respects the sovereign state status of former Soviet states.